and and implementing a fair bit of the metagame.
He's also a doctor.
That's true. And old.
Young at heart. And more in shape than I am, to be honest.
Yeah, bikes every day to work.
And away from it.
Are the volumes okay? Everybody can hear us fine?
Yeah, I'm all sorted. Had a headset problem.
All right.
So, Tina, you're going to be filtering everything?
Yeah. Can start it. And those of you who don't know, Alex is the producer for MW5. All right. Well, we'll begin since it's already 6. So in the text channel called Career AMA 6 p.m., I will open it for questions.
And they're off.
So quick.
They're all poised on the keyboard with hitting return.
Okay. Start right off. Saruno asks if there are any developments in the Inner Sphere planned after the main story events have happened, I presume. Will the last year's events loop, as some have suggested, or are there random events? We're still working out what the post-game looks like. We do know that we want to continue the sandbox after you've completed the main arc, you've made it to the finish line. So I won't speak too much about that just yet. Don't want to overcommit, but we're still planning for being able to have that loop continue in terms of the mercenary lifestyle specifically. So story's done, but you can still fight with the factions. You can still do what you've been doing. That's still the plan.
Zozia, are there any penalties for extremely low reputation with factions beyond simply not being offered contracts by said factions? So they're, besides not being offered contracts or being bad terms on the contracts, you'll still get contracts with factions that you're not just an enemy of the state, but you will also get
Tina, can you still hear me?
Now I hear you. I couldn't hear you for a minute. Can you hear David?
Yeah, I can hear you, but I can't. Dave, you there?
I am. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. What incentives, if any, do friends have for playing co-op with the campaign host? What do they get out of it? Basically, they get to play with their friends. So we couldn't really think up a reasonable way that you could take things back to your own game. It also really complicates all the multiplayer and the co-op. So it's basically there for the camaraderie.
Varys asks, will every pilot we hire be unique, possessing unique dialogue and portraits, or will they be generated from a template using stock phrases and portraits? Is it a combination of both? Also, are you the same Alex Garden responsible for Homeworld? Love that game. We'll be building a core set of handcrafted pilots with specific backgrounds and unique portraits, unique dialogue, unique characterizations. Keeping the scope on those in reason. And then beyond that, we'll be generating more generic pilots on top of that. So you'll be able to just continue playing throughout the IS, go to different territories, and still be able to pick up pilots without seeing a lot of repetition in the crafted ones if we were to just use those. So it's a combination of both. And I am not the same Alex Garden. We're cousins. So that's that.
The other part about the pilots, we have specific assets for the personas that they have. So this is a great thing for modding. So literally, if you can go in, make the sets, make the portraits, add names, add characteristics of those, set them up so they'll show up for just one particular faction. So all of that is in there, but we simply just don't have the bandwidth for creating, dozens or hundreds of these.
Arenaceus. This one's about story progression. How will story missions progress? Is it do mission 2 to get access to mission 3, or will we have other factors like year or reputation mercenary rating before the next one becomes available? So the core set, first couple acts of the story are reputation based. So those will pop as you advance. So we can kind of reliably have an expectation about what your resources and what you can field are a little more concrete, so we can scale difficulty accordingly. And then once that kind of the preliminary arc is complete, we do have some timeline-specific story events that do occur a little further down the road. So it's kind of a combination of the two.
Moldy Cheese asks, once you complete the story, will you be able to continue your mercenary career, or will the game just end there? Finishing the story does not end the game. This is your own personal story as you as a mercenary representative. It's not the goal of the entire game, which is to become an elite, top-ranked mercenary company.
Smashing's got a question here. Bit of a long one. So in regards to the ever-shifting nature of the map during the course of the game, will that have an effect on the story missions? For example, will mission payouts be fixed, or can they be affected by who controls the story mission planet at any given time? Will the nature of the op forward change substantially? Will the planet on which the mission is to take place always be the same, or will it jump around based on the fluctuating state of the borders? So we touched on this a little bit in this morning's AMA. Generally, the story is framed independent of the larger machinations of the great houses and the succession wars. We didn't want to tie the player narrative too closely to that, just because it would kind of lead to a lot of these questions that would be fun to answer, but increase kind of the scope of the work we need to do to present a great story. So we've narrowed it down to kind of a specific series of events. So yeah, you won't see that kind of fluctuation in that sense, depending on the state of the IS at the time.
Okay. Raining Fire wants you to be able to, once you finish the game, toggle a different kind of mech lab that has different kinds of rules. That's really a scoping one. Creating a new mech lab, a new set of interfaces, is twice the amount of effort of doing it, and doing it once is quite enough for at least this version.
Not so Deadpool 15. Will there be a new Game Plus option where we can keep our mech stables and or C-bills? Currently, no. There's no explicit new Game Plus. We are exploring being able to continue basically your current arc playthrough after the core campaign is complete. But in terms of a start me from the beginning, but with everything I've earned, no.
Ghastly asks, in the early AMA, you mentioned mission arcs, which are strings of missions. Are these back-to-back where you don't have time to repair or refit? No, they are not necessarily back-to-back. So each contract gets generated and offered one after the other, but they do have time limits. So it's potentially that this next contract in the series would have a limit that you have to do it within a couple of weeks, and you may not have time to make all your repairs then. So in which case it will just expire and you've missed it.
Damocles 8 asks if we'll have long-term contracts with houses. If we have a high loyalty with them, for example, the Grey Death Legion in Steiner or McCarran's Armored Cavalry in Lao. Nothing in that sense, no. The mission arcs will give us the ability to provide longer-term arcs for a series of contracts, but in terms of a long-term contract over a number of years or something more akin to a loyalist structure, no planned currently.
Will pilots have the ability to train special skills? No. So it's not going to be like Football Manager or something where you send a pilot out to train. They will increase their skills as they use them in missions. So if you don't use them in missions, they won't increase in their skill levels. Will there be house-specific mechs and variants? Yes, there will. So we have the rarity tables that will sit down and say that this mech is just simply not used by this house, and or only used by this house. And some of them, I believe, they all have their own paint schemes as well, if they're associated with a particular house.
Yeah, to touch on the paint scheme things a little bit. So yeah, when you drop against the forces of a specific house, you'll be likely to encounter them in a coordinated lance. So you'll see their heraldry, their patterns or color schemes be easily identifiable and give a lot of character to the forces you face. If you're fighting others, insurgents or pirates or what have you, you'll see a bigger mishmash of the available patterns. And we've taken over everything for NWO, so patterns, schemes, and the color selection system is basically just the entire color wheel for Mech 5, not swatch based. So customization on that level is a little deeper.
Boilerplate. Will we see any story character choices in MW, like in MW4? You do get to choose which major faction that you start out with, and that will affect your starting mech, but it won't affect the story. And of course, where you are in the inner sphere will determine a little bit in terms of the mix of mechs that you will be able to buy and come across in battle.
Will 9761 asks similar question, but a little bit different from one before, so we'll run through it again. If you anger a faction long enough, is it possible that you could be blacklisted by them? For example, if I keep harassing Kurita in missions, will they not offer me any more contracts? We thought about this, about how punishing we wanted the reputation results to be. We settled in a state where you can become essentially, once you've maxed out negative reputation, you're considered an enemy of the state. So they're not going to be offering you contracts or the same level of contracts as before. Market opportunities will be reduced, but we still always want to give you a method to kind of pull yourself out of the muck. So, engaging with them in marketplace transactions, taking those low value contracts, you will be able to build back up your reputation, build that trust back up over time, so you can pull yourself out of that condition. So there's no pure outright, blacklisted, we're never going to work with you again state.
Viking Farmer, will we see any branching narrative options? Will you choose story contracts that we have on different sides? So the story contracts, there's no branching. Potentially for the mission arcs, there would be, in terms of if the mission arc is an insurgency. So you could potentially fight for either the governor of that system or the rebels in that system, and if you decide to change sides halfway through, then yes, you can do that, and that'll change, the levels of rewards and your reputation that you gain from it.
Inter asks if the handcrafted NPCs pilots will be potential hires. Will they differ based on which territory I start in? Yeah, so generally we're gonna be building these characters as people with a backstory. So they'll have come from a place, they'll have ended up in a place. So you'll be more likely to encounter people from a region if you're in that region. Obviously that's not always how things work out. So you'll find people from elsewhere. They've been blessed with a good life. They've been able to jump from one thing to the next, make their way into a company, become a pilot. Others working their way up from nothing and having a characterization that kind of reflects that. So generally, yeah, you'll see some stuff that reflects where you are. So as much as possible, things feel right in terms of who you're meeting.
Moldy Cheese, will there be non-story central contracts that last multiple sessions, similar to Battletech's flashpoints? You won't be able to play. Yes, those are our mission arcs, but you will not be able to play them in instant action currently. So.
Nestushin asks if there'll be a possibility of campaign or generated missions involving more than one lance of allied/enemy mechs, possibly large-scale skirmishes like 12v12. Will we be able to make mods of this? Yeah, so we're thinking big. You as the player, you're going to be just commanding that 4-mech lance, issuing the commands to those 3 other mechs along with you. But, and some of this was shown in the MechCon 2018 mission that we presented, where when you reach that final objective, which was being secured by the local population, they had some ground vehicles there that would support you while you're fighting the enemy reinforcements that are flying in through their Leopard. So we have the ability to have allied and multiple enemy forces on the field. So we haven't quite taken that to the awesome extreme just yet, but we're definitely going to be shooting for that sense of you're arriving in the midst of a skirmish and of a large-scale fight. You're basically here as a support company, joining the existing forces in this fight. So we want to push that battlefield, that scale of destruction, scale of combat as much as we can.
Fireblood, are you able to name your merc unit company, and are there going to be set decals? Hang on, I just scrolled up past that. Set decals like in Battletech and can we make our own for the game? So you should be able to name your merc unit company and I think a motto as well. And there will be decals for it, and you'll certainly be able to make your own if you're going to mod the game and have your own set.
Clarification briefly there is the company logo, we haven't fully scoped out exactly what you're going to be able to make, whether or not you'll be able to make them in the game itself or whether you'll just be choosing from a set selection. At this point, the trajectory we're on, it's likely that if you want to do a custom emblem with the robust mod support, it'd be pretty trivial for you to basically import a custom image and replace that. So we should be able to commit to that.
We're not making a paint program inside the game for you to make your own logos.
No, as much as I would like to. That would be awesome. Fantasy asks if will time progress after the story is complete. Yeah, that's the plan. It's obviously it's a interesting scenario that you'll end up in by the end of the 35-year campaign. What with the subsequent events post 3049. But getting back to that idea that we want to still make that merc loop available to you after you complete the core arc. And we still want to do that. Obviously, it'll kind of be, if we go down that road, it'll be a kind of a frozen timeline concept, so we don't have to worry about the details of those subsequent events. You'll basically just be in a playground that at that point, the subsequent lore is not accounted for. So that's the current plan. Boilerplate, yep, go ahead.
Yes, boilerplate, will completing or not completing certain mission objectives affect the career story? So no, the career isn't multi-branching, and basically some of the story missions, if you fail, you're simply going to have to repeat it. So cannibalistic. If incentives for co-op. Oh, you want to add to that, Alex?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So yeah, if incentives for co-op are unworkable because it's too hard to connect one player's campaign to another, can we not have a unique independent character for co-op where your co-op progression can be tied? That's an approach we considered. It's not off the table just yet. So we may go down that road, but at the moment we're still just approaching the co-op with the joining the host universe instance approach.
But certainly, if you've got, since they're just taking over the AI character, and if you want your friend to always be associated with one AI character, then you can set it up that way and always just assign them to that character, and they will progress through it, and they will, whatever their player, your co-op player does in the game, any skills that they accrue will accrue to that AI character. So you can sort of at least jury rig it.
Moldy Cheese asks, after beating the campaign at least once, will there be an option to play through the game without the story, just as a mercenary company trying to earn a living? Not at the moment, no. That being said, because most of the the early to mid story arc is based on reputation, you can just choose not to take those missions. Once you get past the introduction, the tutorial and some of the post-tutorial story components, as those missions pop up, you can just not take them. So if you want to, mess about and fight pirates for 30 hours, you're free to do so in the current structure. And boilerplate, will pilots have views on certain choices throughout the story/career? For example, a pilot not supporting Steiner and leaving as a result of doing too many contracts for Steiner. And at the moment, we weren't going quite that deep with the branching decisions and impacts on the greater Innersphere and company. The pilots you're hiring on, they're assumed loyal unless you want to get rid of them. Yeah, that is, well, actually no, I'll leave it there.
Nashlushan, will there be any incentive for going down the same campaign of reputation? For example, if you finish the campaign, would it allow you a mech unavailable during the early campaign on a new campaign? No, when you're restarting the game, it essentially restarts it from the beginning, and you can only change it really by starting in a different faction, and that gives you different starting starting conditions.
Enter asks, by the time the end game is reached, will light mechs still be as viable as assaults? In what circumstances or scenarios might they continue to be useful? So it really, honestly, comes down to the situation, the mission, the encounter that you're facing at that moment. Obviously, in a brawl situation, one-to-one, just drawn-out combat, obviously the light mechs won't be and really shouldn't be as viable as assaults. We don't have quite the same balance considerations as we do with NWO, so we can be a little bit more bold in the characterization of mech roles and how they can be used optimally. So that being said, even endgame, we're crafting endgame missions with endgame difficulty that will still cater to the playstyle that really leverages light mechs and medium mechs and things with better mobility, lighter armor, lighter firepower. So especially with the lance system, if you want to take a mission where you want to run a light and you want to manage the rest of your lance with heavies and assaults, certain missions that will be an interesting approach, a fun approach, and an effective one. You'll be able to get into those garrisons, disable some of the defenses, control some conditions within those garrisons, and pretty effectively turn the tide of things without having to be the biggest DPS dealer in the lance.
Yeah, we certainly want to make light mech still useful. We don't want the ultimate win everything, roll over everything to be 4 assaults in your drop deck. Army of One has several questions rolled in there. Can you play for a pirate faction? We have some discussion on that, but I believe at this point we're coming along the idea that you can, in fact, play for the independents, the peripheral realms, or a pirate faction. So yes, there will be different kinds of negotiations if you're working with a main faction versus working with an independent or a pirate slash outlaw, as we're calling them.
Will9761, how will you know how you are progressing or that events are occurring through the story? Is it going to be news medias, Tradios, lance mates talking about certain events, etc.? We have a core kind of alert system that will be pinging you for things like this, like not just contract availability, but marketplace things, but also just broader events in the inner sphere. You're not necessarily going to be engaging in these key moments, but that alert system is really there just to give you an understanding about the universe you're fighting in, context, and all the stuff that's happening while you're off doing your thing. The universe is a living place, and these factions are, fighting each other, losing ground, gaining ground, significant events, and we don't want to lose that. So as much as we can, we're going to push the awareness of what's going on around you, so you don't feel like you're just kind of fighting in a empty hallway, pretty much.
Enigma of the Dragon. If you take fewer Mechwarriors to be underweight for missions, do you earn the same rewards for missions or an increased amount? You earn the same amount. You are being hired to do a job, not necessarily to be specifically skilled or as a challenge. Once the game is released from Fergvir, will there be additional stories or extensions of the story? And can we expect this DLC? That's the idea, is that we certainly can provide these additional mission arcs that are going to be able to.
Yeah, the list of post-release content and expansion ideas is a long one, but we'll see.
Ideas are not the issue. The DLC.
Yeah.
Fireblood, following up with the Lancemate question earlier, can you customize Lancemate call signs or change their generated image, say for Twitch play and donator names or friends, or add friends' names to pilots? We hadn't thought about that.
Yeah,
that's
nor
probably
had
something to take into consideration. That's actually not a bad idea. So, because that wouldn't actually be too much. I'm not promising anything here, but that wouldn't actually take too much effort.
You heard it here, folks. Dave just promised it.
You've just got me thinking. That's all. Anyway, it's a good question.
Ripper X, will there be different story endings depending on which missions you select during the campaign? No, fortunately, no. So the story, for scope and focus reasons, it's a specific arc. So branching is awesome. It's also difficult to nail, and we want to kind of focus down on a nice start to finish story set in this universe. Arenatius, MW4 Mercs had a mission play concept in instant action, which allowed you to play a story mission with any mech. Is this something you have considered? It is, yeah. So internally, we actually use our instant action flow to kick off story missions quickly without having to go through the standard flow. So technically speaking, that's possible. To be honest, we hadn't considered putting those missions instant action on release. It's a little tricky because because of the story, the way this stuff unfolds, a lot of these missions require proper context. So we hadn't fully considered it. We'll keep it in mind, but at the moment they would be excluded from instant action availability. But we can consider some options.
Fantasy. Any upgrades for the various components on the Leopard, such as the mech bay or the engine, similar to HBS's Battletech? No, we've got no plans along those lines at the moment. We have considered adding, no plans at the moment. Yeah, we've considered an awful lot of things, which we're just not going to be able to do for scoping reasons.
Smashed-In, what kind of mission types will we see in the campaign and side missions? How many objectives will we see during most missions? Will campaign feature any mission types that will not be seen in the rest of the Merc Loop experience? Will there be any special mission/objective types for the ARC missions? So we're trying to leverage as much as we can wherever we can. With team our size, this project of this scope, it really benefits us and honestly benefits the game if we leverage the work we do in story missions in generated missions and vice versa. So we're trying to design things in a modular approach. So, when we come up with a cool story mission and we say, man, it'd be sweet if, we had the player do this and then this happened. When we implement that, we really try to keep in mind the fact that, if it's going to be awesome to do that in a story mission, it's going to be just as awesome to do it in a generated mission. So again, it's beneficial to think about this just one shared approach to how we handle mission types, objective types, and moments. That said, there's obviously value in marquee moments when it comes to story missions, so there will be some of that, unique occurrences, unique things that happen in those to give them that flavor of a story mission that we've been able to handcraft start to finish.
Yeah, under the hood, the people that are making the story missions are using exactly the same scripting, exactly the same tools that the procedural mission uses to link a particular objective together, and they're using a lot of the same assets, although we have unique assets for a fair bit of the story missions, which we can't transfer directly into the procedural missions. So we'll try to use things as to reuse them as much as possible.
Templar Prime 777 asks, what kind of upkeeps will you have in the campaign? So mercenary upkeep, yeah. So pilot upkeep, salaries obviously, battle mech upkeep, so just general maintenance costs that occur on 30-day increments for the number of mechs you've got. That at the moment, that's really it. Is pilot salaries and mech maintenance and just general maintenance
and repairs, which you'll get there. So that's
of course, yeah.
Blue, is there any contracts we can take under other mercenary companies? No, you are running your own mercenary company. You are not subcontracting out to anybody else.
Enigma of the Dragon asks, will mechs be random or will they be set for NPCs during story missions? They'll be set right now. A lot of the story missions have very specific scenarios in which they take place, and to kind of get the most out of the characterization of the enemy or allied pilot, we basically consider the mech they pilot a part of their character. So it benefits us to be able to say, this person's piloting a warhammer, et cetera, et cetera.
Tare, will a faction that dislikes you offer you a trap or bait contracts? No contract. Everything can always go pear-shaped, and if they hate you, the likelihood of that is going to increase. And of course, you never trust Merrick, anyways.
Damn.
Irenaceous, are there generated missions without an employer or the HPS Battletech style of local government employers? We're, again, for scoping reasons, we may concentrate more on just getting the variety up rather than getting a whole NPC system to back up what we've got for that in terms of the fluff that surrounds a particular mission, a generated mission. So we don't know yet. Total Dawson, we've answered that one. So yes, once the story ends, the ending of the story is not the end of the game. You have to continue on, and you're trying to get your mercenary company to elite status, and that may not have happened by the time you reach the end of the story mission.
So Enigma of the Dragon, in the earlier AMA, you stated that if you lose your mech, it is a mission failure. Is it still the same if people are playing co-op? Will you have to play from the back lines to keep from losing the mission? Yeah, so fail conditions in co-op scenarios are something we're still playing with. Can't answer that with full confidence just yet, unfortunately. Yeah, I'll leave it there for now.
So Cannibal, go ahead.
Yeah, Cannibalistic asks, if stories have no branching, is there a significant level of interaction from the player character into the narrative? Yes, yeah, we do have a few central characters that are part of your merc company and part of the overall story that we are modeling in more detail as characters. So there will be dialogue, there will be exchanges, there will be revelations of information that the player will discover. Data logs that they'll acquire that give a window not just into the universe but into the events that preceded the start of the game, and insight into certain events that are occurring through the story.
Gray Fox, will there be quick play and will you have to unlock mechs in that mode? There certainly will be quick play or instant action, and we're still undecided about the unlock the mechs. There will be scenarios in which you don't get a choice of the mech that you play for that particular quick play scenario, but that's still to be decided.
Yeah, generally speaking, unless you're doing a pre-baked scenario like Dave said, where if we've built something or somebody has built something and submitted it as a downloadable scenario, which will be possible. There may be restrictions. We still looking at that, but at a basic level, if you're just using instant action to run into generated missions within objective archetypes and mission types and things like that, we decided there's no reason really to restrict mech availability. You can take what you want. You can be as OP as you want. It's instant action, right? So we want to present it as a playground for you, and yeah, that's it. Dark Death Trooper, will there be escort missions? And if so, will we see a return of escort to MWO? Can't answer the MWO one, but right now there is no escort mission MW5. We tossed it around a little bit, but we just identified 50 other mission types that would be more enjoyable at a base level than escort. I will say one thing for escort. Escort missions generally are fun if you're the one attacking the escort convoy. Not as likely to be fun in the reverse scenario.
Fantasy. It was mentioned that Mechwarriors gain skills by actually being on the field and fighting. That is a nice idea and all, but how are players going to be training backup warriors? At the moment, you have to have a rotation. So pilots do get injured, and so you really need to be able to keep your roster up to date. We don't have any sort of background tasks that will sit down and train your mech warriors for you, and they're not actually doing anything.
Hajinum, will there be freelancers? Possible to hire freelancers, missions based with own mechs possibly. At the moment, no. Pilots are the pilots. They don't come with their own mech. They don't bring a mech to the table unless it's a story thing. So no, I mean essentially everybody's a freelancer, and you basically just take them on for contracts that last however long you want them to last, in a sense.
DAG, will there be multiple ways to acquire mechs via career? So you can get them off the battlefield. You can salvage them off the battlefield if they're still salvageable. You will be able to get them in the marketplace, and potentially you can acquire it from succeeding in a specific mission. So a mission could say, you do this and you do a good job on this mission, and we'll give you this mech for it.
Dark Templar 11.4. Will there be personal contracts you can undertake that allow one to find Lost Tech or Star League era equipment rather than payments or salvage? Won't go into too much detail, but that's an aspect of the universe that we want to explore and are exploring. So there will be some exploration, Indiana Jones treasure hunt components to it, definitely. Mech Lab questions we'll leave for a future, more specific Mech Lab AMA. John Metz, in the post-story gameplay, will the missions be procedurally generated, not just in environments, but AI, etc., with the idea that no two missions of the same type will be the same visually and opponent AI behavior vary to keep things fresh and less repetitive. Yeah, I mean that's generally how the generated missions are approached in the first place. So biome variations, mission variations, AI differences, mech differences, vehicles, tanks, ground vehicles, air vehicles. So it's quite a lot of variation.
Yep, and the pilot skill levels and the mechs themselves can have better or worse weapons, and can also come onto the field partially damaged if you're fighting some pirate or bandit group. And the missions, you'll be able to play procedurally generated missions throughout. You don't just follow the story missions and you have a choice of whether you're going to play a story mission or take procedurally generated missions, which are typically going to be available at any time past the first 3 or 4. So they'll always be there.
Astucian, will we be able to eject from our mechs and commandeer empty mechs and or tanks or other vehicles? Will we get missions where we're using non-mech small arms like battle armors? Unfortunately, no. As rad as that would be. Snufflewuffle asks if will or can the game be as difficult as a game like XCOM, for example, parentheses, tough as nails. We don't currently have a set my difficulty to normal, set my difficulty to hard kind of approach. Missions vary in difficulty, and as a player you can choose to take varying missions based on difficulty. So that is currently how we're approaching difficulty. And obviously, as you progress through the campaign, through the mercenary life, things will get more intense missions will appear, and things will scale up. But you conceivably you could just run mid-level missions for as much as you like if that's what you're comfortable with.
Will there be specific mercs that you can unlock by completing campaign missions? No, as far as I understand. Actually, Alex, you'd be better at to answer. Sebastian.
Yeah, we have support for that. We're potentially yes. There may be some story components where you bring somebody off the field.
Fantasy, are there going to be hero mechs and rare variants? Yes, the stuff that we have in MWO and they're in the timeline are going to be coming over.
Fireblood asks if you can change your own pilot name and or call sign, or is your character voiced and already set as such as in previous titles. So currently we don't have a voiced character. We have a silent protagonist. They do have a set backstory with identified parents and a lineage from which they're derived that is core to the story. There's no reason that we need to restrict the renaming of things and adjustment of the character within kind of those bounds. But yeah, should cover it.
I think the anything in game is sort of refers to you generically, right? So you don't have a specific call sign or pilot name that's being used. So.
Will there be continuous drops like they had in BattleTech? It's been a little while since I played BattleTech. Continuous drops as in
does that mean
waves?
Other mechs coming in to on either side? So yes, there is potential for support troops to come in on your side and for additional enemies to come in on the opposing side. So, but you will not continuously drop in terms of I dropped with 4 mechs, I go back to some rendezvous point and then choose another mech and drop again in the same mission. So nothing like that.
Person's name is just a banana. So will there? Where will the timeline for the game end? Last I heard, 3048. Is this related to the Helm memory core, and how much attention to lore is going into it? Timeline ends 3049, 3050. thereabouts.
The Helm memory core is way before that.
Before that, yeah.
I think it's 3025, and then it takes 10 or 15 years to get distributed for the tech to get distributed throughout the inner sphere. So, in terms of what the Helm core will do, that means more different techs, double heat sinks, and other kinds of things start to become available after that period of time.
Insatiable Void asks, will there be mini events between missions, HBS Battletech style, that may affect your merc group? No, not at this time. Moldy Cheese asks, although branching story paths / endings and choices of many kinds are out for the current release, will it be something that you consider for expansions down the line once the current game is successful and well established? Yeah, I mean, under those results,
That's already in. That's already in the big pile of things we would like to do.
Yes.
So.
Grey Foxver asks, will there be a game lobby for multiplayer so you can play with new people? No, multiplayer co-op right now is basically just based on a friend invite system. So we won't be operating, lobby hosts and server lobbies and things. Scalar Nebula, is co-op engagement instance-based, essentially mission-based, or can a group be in a lobby state viewing a mains player game as they go through their campaign? The co-op structure right now is actually quite flexible. What it ends up looking like in the end is, we're still going to polish that and change subject to alteration a little bit. But, you're not just launching into the mission and then being kicked back out. You're actually launching into the whole instance of that person's universe, and that includes the hangar, the physical space. So, start there, queue up the mission, run through, make the mech choices, whatever needs to be done pre-mission, run the mission, and when you return, you're going back to that hangar instance. And on the player, on the host side, their universe, their world is advancing as it needs to, things are happening, jumping from here to there, running another mission, et cetera, et cetera. So that persistent loop of co-op is something we strongly believe in. So that's the current framework.
Inter, with the availability of missions being so heavily dependent on reputation, and since past AMAs have said there is no difficulty slider, what happens when missions become too difficult for comfort? Must the player fail contracts, sacrifice rep in order to be offered easier ones? So the reputation that you get is something that you acquire and lose, but your ability to take on a particular mission of a particular difficulty really has less to do with your reputation and more to do with your total assets. So all my current mechs are broken, but I have 8 other mechs in storage, and I have tons and tons of C-bills in the bank account. So technically, you would be able to buy sufficient mechs to handle something of a particular difficulty. If you've had 3 or 4 missions where you've been beat down, and beat down, your total assets are going to go down. And we're going to take that into account to bracket the range of the difficulties of missions that we're going to offer. So it's not just based on your reputation, which kind of goes up and down depending on win or fail, but an internal value that we're going to look at that says, well, this guy's been completely beat up. He has no cash. He has nothing else like that. He's really only able to field a certain level of mechs in his dropship, and so we're going to offer other missions that have less opposition. So, like I said, so the shorter answer is yes. We're going to keep an internal track on what you actually could put.
Okay, Cardo asks if you consider an online outreach program or find group option for players that want to play with other people but might not have friends on. So yeah, we've touched on this a little bit. As a scope consideration, it's really just a friends-based co-op system. We're not going to be providing server browsers or anything along those lines. Especially, I feel like things are very different today than they were 10, 15 years ago, where social communities are so much more widespread. It's easier to find like-minded people who interested in a title, interested in a game, and be able to kind of coordinate those things. Not to say that there's not a value in titles providing server browsers, but I feel like the demand isn't quite the same. So no, at the moment it's a friend-based, direct invite kind of system.
Insatiable Void. I think I released on that previous question, I think I let go of the shift key too soon. But moving ahead, Insatiable Void, is clan tech planned? Not for this game. So you will not be able to acquire clan tech and add it to your mercenary company.
The Count asks, how big an impact will the Helm Memory Core event have on the story? I won't go into too many specifics at the moment, but obviously, it's a momentous event. It obviously has huge ramifications on availability of equipment, new equipment, lost equipment. It's we want to model that impact, just in terms of sheer availability of items and kind of how things develop from there on out. So an impact, I'll say that right now. Nastushan asks, similar question we've touched on, will we be able to replay campaign missions specifically after completing the campaign? We'll be able to redo a mission after completing it, even if it doesn't have a benefit. So right now, once the story mission is complete, it's consumed, you won't be able to redo it in the core campaign. Whether or not you'll be able to replay campaign missions elsewhere, as we touched on earlier, potentially in the instant actions screen, we're still feeling that out.
Thermosi, how likely are we to find lost tech or tech that is a result of the Helm Memory Core? Well, certainly in the timeline, the Helm Memory Core tech does start to permeate its way through the inner sphere, and you'll eventually be able to find stuff in the marketplace. Lost tech is lost tech, and it's rare, and it will show up here and there every now and again. It won't be something that you're going to be able to count on to go and find just by rummaging around in looking for coins in the couch.
And if you do have a chance to find it, obviously it won't be the only one. MediJ, how will transport from planet to planet work? Loading screen, movie, or some other form of interactive transit system, Battletech, for example. So very early on, we, the engineering team in particular, was very interested in having a game that had minimal load times, minimal, even hiding load times behind, like elevators and things like that. So the load system is pretty efficient, even at mid development, where things can fluctuate quite a lot in terms of progress and stability and all those things. Load times are pretty quick, So we don't really have a need to hide a lot of that stuff behind, floating drop ships and whatnot. We do have sequences and cinematics that play in the front end to just kind of add a little bit of flavor and immersion into the act. The fact that you are traveling through space, system to system, vast distances. So we're pushing the polish of that for sure through sequences.
Damocles 8, how hard it would be to add the nemesis system that was mentioned in the AMA as a stretch goal? I don't know. We certainly, since the idea of a nemesis and other merc companies was in our minds when we were designing the underlying systems, it's certainly within the scope of being able to do, but I have no idea I wouldn't be able to give an estimate of how hard it would be able to add it or how long it would take.
Usually the answer in game development is it hard? Yes, it's hard. More often than not. Banana, where will Lost Tech be involved in the game? What kind of interaction will the players have with Comstar? No comment. Temperfire, considering repairs. Oh, we're at the 6-minute mark. Winding down. Considering repairs, will this rely only on spending C-bills, or will we have to collect salvage parts of that mech in order to repair? Right now, it's C-bills and time. You have your techs. The assumption is that part of the upkeep, part of their salary, they're sourcing parts, they're sourcing items required to maintain these mechs. So you don't really need to salvage, the right arm of an Atlas to repair the right arm. It's just going to take you time and money.
Irenaceous, you seem to have co-op with trusted friends. Would it be possible for a host to allow other players access to the mech lab? It is a technical problem. It vastly complicates everything that's going on in the front end, from the handshaking and yeah, it's just something we wouldn't even know how to start tackling on that, given the way that the front end works in Unreal.
Indicus asks, will there be ship upgrades like more mech bays, repair speed upgrades, etc.? No. The dropship is the dropship. As a merc company, starting from nothing, you're quite honestly fortunate enough to be able to even repair mechs, let alone upgrading a dropship. It's a tall order.
Fantasy, about when would we be expecting a full mech and variant roster? Well, I mean, I think we've stated before that anything that's in timeline that we have an MWO will be appearing in the game, so somebody could make that up. We could figure that out. I don't think we're planning on actually releasing a specific list.
No, we've talked about it. We may, as we approach release and through marketing, show additional variants in mechs and unveil more of what you can expect. I mean, as Dave said, we have MWO assets. We have the variants. We have all of the data. Bringing over those as much as we can. If somebody were to build a list, I will say, off MWO and the timeline restrictions, there may still be some surprises in the end. So we'll leave it there.
There will always be surprises.
Always. Sono asks, will we be able to save mech loadouts for instant action missions? Not at the moment. No. At the moment, you are taking stock mechs, standard mechs. That said, the loadout system is versatile in terms of being able to bring in modified loadouts and things like that. So remains to be seen whether we'll provide the mech lab flow to the instant action screen. Smastian asks, how does the injury system work? Can't go into detail at the moment. This is something we're still kind of feeling out. This is one of those very critical gameplay balancing, campaign feel kind of things. Don't want to overcommit too much in terms of how we will end up approaching it. Just that we're getting a feel for how we want it to work.
Fantasy, will Virtual Combat Simulator be available on the Leopard as training mode? No. So if you want to practice your MWO, then you'd use your MW5 and your mech piloting skills, and I guess the instant action will be the way to go.
Let's try and speed through some of these. Iron Man mode, we got 2 minutes. Is there going to be an Iron Man mode?
I want an Iron Man mode. Oh, damn. All right. No Iron Man mode.
To what extent can you customize a pilot? You cannot. It would be great to have a character creator, but we out of scope. Said in the morning, A levels are procedurally generated. We'll include a level editor. Not as an explicit package, but the modability of the game basically will be releasing a level editor. So essentially,
the level editor is UE4. So
yeah,
and there are some tools that go along with it.
You'll be able to create scenarios, and I gotta say, like we are all. I can speak for almost everybody here. Really looking forward to the what comes out of the mod scene. It's going to be, I think it'll be pretty insane, but we'll see. Bolt-ons, no bolt-ons. Kind of stuff is there to do. At the moment, as a co-op player walking around the Leopard, there isn't much to do. It's really just about kind of walking around the space, looking at the mechs, checking things out. They're, cool to have a little pinball machine in the corner that you can jump onto, but at the moment it's just taking in the space. And that is the 7 o'clock mark.
Ding, 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 ding. All right. Thanks, everybody. Good questions in this one. And we hope we've got to the main ones here.
Yeah, that was a lot of questions.
We almost made it to the bottom.
That was a record this morning, yeah.
All right, folks. Thanks so much for coming on and caring and wanting to know all this. It's awesome. It's invigorating to see interest and excitement. So thanks for coming.
Thanks
you very much.
Thanks for answering all the questions. And yeah, keep up to date for future announcements on the next AMAs, which won't be next week, but perhaps the week after that. Thanks for tuning in.